Great. Okay. Well, welcome everybody. We'll go ahead and get started. My name is Katie Hallman. I am the executive director with Theater Cedar Rapids, and I am so honored that I was asked to moderate a panel on a hit and a myth, the reality of nonprofits as businesses. We're going to have a conversation with my three great panelists here until 11 a.m. And if you have questions during the chat, please populate them in the question area. I'm going to just go ahead and integrate those into our discussion as we go. But please, first, I'll kick us off by introducing the group that I have with me. We have Kurt Strand. He is the president and CEO of the National Mississippi River Museum and Aquarium. Hi, Kurt. Then we have Sean Ulmer, the executive director with the Cedar Rapids Museum of Art here in Cedar Rapids, and Bonnie Valverde, who is the senior director of finance and operations with the Des Moines Arts Center. I was about to say Center for the Arts. That was not your name.
No, totally good.
We are going to tackle a few big topics today. About why nonprofits are businesses. Something that the four of us all battle is we just have to battle some misconceptions in the community from our funders, from our constituents genuinely about how we operate and the pressures that we're under. So just to set the stage, I wanted to talk about kind of our size and some basic stats. So this group sent me some information, and I'll include myself in this. So Theater Cedar Rapids, we have a budget size of just over 3 million. Our earned contributed ratio is 60-40, with 3% of that being our endowment. Our staff size is 15 for full-time, 20 for part-time, and hundreds of contractors and volunteers. All of our performers on stage and backstage are paid. So we operate as a professional, non-union, community-based theater. For the National Mississippi River Museum and Aquarium, where Kurt is, their budget size is variable from 7.5 to 9 million, depending on their initiatives for the year. Their earned, contributed, and endowment split is 63% earned. Those would be admissions, 32% from contributions and grant, and 5% on the earnings from their endowment. Their staff size is 52, with 25 part-timers and 150 volunteers. Cedar Rapids Museum of Art, where Sean is, we're at a budget size of 1.25 million, earned, contributed, and endowment. We've got 15% earned from those admissions, 45% contributed, and 40% from their endowment earnings. And their staff size is 8 full-time, 8 part-time, and 128, almost 130 volunteers to keep the ship going. And then finally in Des Moines, we're at 8 million, where Bonnie serves as the director of finance and operations. The earned contributed split is 11% earned, 32% contributed, and 57% is from their endowed earnings. And their staff size is 56 full-time employees, 33 part-time, 60 volunteers. How could anyone think that nonprofits aren't a business? Those are real numbers. Those are real numbers. And I would love to kick off by asking you the question, what is the myth that you want to debunk about how we operate? Specifically, are nonprofits profitable?
Yeah. I can kick us off. I love talking about our business case that we build here. And we are not for profits. We have a mission, we have a purpose, but at the end of the day, we do have to operate as business. So we're constantly looking at how are we generating revenue? How are we managing expenses to make sure that we have the resources to execute our mission? So that is at top of mind. That doesn't get lost with the mission, with the programming, with the exhibitions, specifically here at the Arts Center. So that is always at top of mind among my colleagues. And it starts at the top and it goes all the way down to the bottom. And we're continuously educating our staff members, our visitors, our donors of the importance of that. So because we want to continue to be here. We just celebrated 75 years for the Des Moines Arts Center, and we want to be here another 75. And in order for us to be able to do that, we have to think as a business, and we do. So that I think is one that we continue to struggle with. That it's not just a mission; it's we tackled the business case along with that as well. So
I'd like to echo what Bonnie said. First of all, congratulations on your 75th. That's quite an accomplishment. We're 128 years old, and we wouldn't be here if we weren't thinking of ourselves as a business. And we started out simply enough as an art club, where just a group of like-minded people got together and they wanted an arts organization in the city. That's great for 1895. But if you're going to be here, in 2023, you need to have some business practices. That we are a nonprofit business, and whenever I have the opportunity to talk to funders or other business leaders, I make sure that I insert that word after nonprofit. It might be obvious to us in the field, but if we don't operate like a business, we can't pay our staff, and our staff is what makes all the magic happen in here at the Cedar Rapids Museum of Art, and so you have to, like a for-profit business, think of your organization as a business. We produce something very different than a lot of for-profit businesses. We are very, like the Des Moines Arts Center and the National Mississippi River Museum, very, mission focused. Absolutely. But we produce a different product, as it were. But if you don't have, all of the same parts, basically, that a for-profit business has, you're not going to be able to succeed at fulfilling that mission for your community.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. And the myths that I hear about, people in the community will say, well, the River Museum has a lot of money because you have a lot of people visiting. We also have a lot of fish and animals and artifacts to take care of. That's our charge, to do that. They'll say, you're owned by the city. We're not owned by the city. We are a nonprofit. That you don't have to have a P&L that works. You can lose money. But if we lose money, we still have to fund the business, fund the maintenance, fund those other types of things. So I was in a for-profit organization for a long time, and it strikes me the differences and the similarities. But there are a lot of assumptions out there regarding nonprofits that have to do with what you do. And if you don't have enough money, go and ask your board for more money. I heard that recently, which I kind of laughed about first and said, that's really not the role of the board either. It's really an interesting experience to work in an organization based on a mission and passion. But that still means, as Sean said, you have to pay your bills. And what Bonnie was talking about, putting together that right business case for your organization.
I love a comment that we got in the chat, which is a great quotable piece, which says 501c3 is a tax status, not a business model. And that, and that's absolutely true. And here we all are, we're building budgets for sustainability. We have to build budgets for profit. Our profits don't go to individual stakeholders. They go back into our operation. It's so interesting. We have, I'm kind of like looking at the dynamics that you all manage. And for museums, CRMA and Des Moines Art Center specifically, that are a little different than the Mississippi River Museum and Aquarium in terms of attendance revenue and generating earned revenue. What barriers to understanding, Bonnie and Sean, do you see when you say, hey guys, you got to pay a ticket price?
Mm-hmm. So I should clarify and note, Katie. So we are free admission to the Art Center here in Des Moines.
Thank you.
So our earned revenue does come from our retail operations and our rentals and our studio revenue. So we do have a studio that we offer classes. So that's where our earned revenue is. So some of and Sean, definitely jump in at any point. One of the things that I've encountered was when I came in, I looked at our earned revenue component of our model, and when we incorporated that portion, it was to complement the museum. How do we bring in more people into the museum? And so it was through these different lines of earned revenue. And so the mindset used to be, as long as they, we should be able to manage to keep it going. And we were not making any profit. We were not even sustaining those lines of business. So the first thing that we tackled was to make each of those lines of business sustainable, essentially, right? Generate revenue so you can support itself. And so that was a change of mindset for us, but that opened up a conversation of, at least here in the Des Moines Arts Center, to look at all of our different revenue streams and how are we innovating and thinking differently to continue to grow our revenue so we can support all of the amazing work that we do here. So.
And we do charge at the Cedar Rapids Museum of Art. We have a $10 admission fee is the top level for regular, and we have a sliding scale down. But an interesting statistic, I don't know how accurate it is, was accurate a couple of years ago, but the average cost of a visitor to a museum is $55 to the museum. We don't charge $55 to get in, right? So we can't. In fact, I think that the top admission fees, and Bonnie, maybe you can correct me, but I think is mostly in museums in New York, is $30. We're not going to get $30 per visitor to the museum in Cedar Rapids, and that's why we try to have multiple revenue streams, as Bonnie was talking about, to offset that. I mean, if every visitor costs us $55, how do we make up that difference between the $10 maximum that we charge somebody and the $45 that we actually have to pay? I mean, we've got enormous utility bills to create the climate that's necessary to properly care for works of art, and of course, our biggest expense, not surprisingly, to anyone here on this panel and probably to everyone that's joined us, is staff. We pay more for people. And again, it's because it's the people who do the work and make all of this magic happen, and that's terrific. But we've got to have different revenue streams, and one of them is admissions. And we have recently raised admissions a little bit, kind of in line with the cost of everything going up over the last year, for example. We've also revamped our membership program. That's another source of earned income for us. And really took a hard look at it, like Bonnie was saying they were doing in Des Moines. I took a hard look at it and said, okay, what are we offering? Is this what people want? And we've modified both the levels and the benefits at each level. And then we have a store. And that's our other main form of earned income, and it does okay. It breaks even. We see it really more as a programmatic part of what we do than as a specific earned income retail side of what we do. But the rest of it is all contributed income through individuals, annual fund, grants, foundations, corporate support, and of course fundraisers. Big part of our bottom line. And then, of course, the endowment. We'd be sunk without the endowment. It really is for us, a very big part of our annual budget. And so that can go up and down year to year. And, even though you've got that 3-year rolling averages to draw off of, you have 3 bad years in a row, as we did after 2008, then your draw off of that, it goes down significantly. And with a tight budget, it doesn't take long before you start hitting staff. And fortunately, we have a wonderful staff here, and we all, in that time, all pulled together to weather that particular financial storm.
Endowment is really interesting, and I think it goes to this idea that contributed income and endowed income is not earned, where it absolutely is. And you all know that you have, I mean, look at your staff layout, look at our staff layouts. You have people dedicated to fundraising, and it takes strategy, and it takes overhead, and it takes, it is earned. I don't know anybody who would say they didn't earn that donor dollar. And our endowments are often legacy gifts or intended gifts. Kurt, you have, it was something you shared earlier, is that something you might hear in the community is, oh, you guys don't need any money, you've got a huge endowment. Well, tell me a little bit about your endowment. How do you build it? How do you regard it?
We work a little bit, our development team, grants team together. We look at all the opportunities we have to reach into the community. A lot of people very passionate about our organization, the impact we have on the region, that we generate about $20 million of economic impact annually. And so people think very highly of the organization. The endowment is a difficult thing to build because it's not sexy, but some people really love doing an endowment because it's that gift that lasts forever. And so we take our endowment that we have and We take about a 5% draw from that annually, and that is built right into our operating expense. We dedicate those dollars for specific things we need to do during that year. That could be some maintenance types of things. It could be refreshing an exhibit. It could be new fish and animals or things like that. But those dollars are just like any other of our expense account items, that when we need to cover those, the dollars that come in, the earned revenue really comes from a wide range of places. Our goal is to build that endowment up to a certain extent down the line within the next period of years to be able to pay down our maintenance so that we can do all the preventive maintenance. We have a 20-year-old campus. It's like having a 20-year-old house. You have to redo things. You got to do the HVAC. You got to do those other types of things. And so we're planning on building up our endowment to be able to shed enough dollars for us to be able to take care of all that preventative maintenance that is necessary for a campus like ours.
Having these building funds is essential. And we've been looking as well at how we allocate dollars regularly, like you're just talking about. I think the History Center here has a really great model where they explicitly state to donors that any gift that a donor makes, X% goes into their building or endowed funds. And they aren't restricting it. It's not becoming a super restricted. It's just stating that they're, having to constantly invest in this upkeep. And we have to do it differently. I think something that we all face too is a perception, so a misconception that we are always doing capital campaigns at the same time. We're always doing capital campaigns. Kurt, we all have, I think this whole group has worked in the for-profit sector. I didn't prep you for this, but can you speak a little bit about that misconception around capital campaigns and, how we're all doing them all at the same time? Why does it seem that way? How can we better communicate with our for-profit partners around this type of investment?
I've been involved in a number of nonprofit boards, so I had a sense for this, but I was never really in the front chair for a capital campaign type of a situation. In the past, the capital campaigns for the River Museum have all been to build something new. But we're at a point in our organization's life that touching the entire campus is very important, but it's difficult to do that with earned revenue, with any types of grants you get and other types of assistance. So putting together a complete cohesive plan or comprehensive plan is a way for us to really touch and upkeep the entire campus and the organization. The messaging is important, but for me, it really is the information that you provide to people so they're aware of the needs you have across your entire campus. We said we're going to build 5 new aquariums and it's going to cost 1.8 million and it's going to provide us this. That's pretty cool and sexy, and people will say, wow, I'd like to support that and put my name on one. But the endowment component of this is really the fuel that allows us to do those other things. And I look at capital campaign fueling that, funding that endowment to have that fund coming to you. So a capital campaign for me really is important because you are selective when you do it, but you're doing it to have an impact perhaps on something that's either facilities campus-wide or some other type of thing that you really can't fund through your regular business.
We're in a constant proof of concept phase.
Yeah.
And I think, this TED Talk is 10 years old, but it's still so important. Dan Pilato, when he said I don't know how to say his last name, so just forgive me, guys. But when he said overhead is not a 4-letter word, this is a kind of question we got in the comments. And my perspective is, I think we've debunked that pretty well in the nonprofit sector. I mean, I don't know how much you all are facing. Oh, well, tell me how much the program costs without the people. I'm not facing that personally anymore. We're just talking. It's like, well, you have to have people to do the thing. But then this capital campaign work that you're talking about, an endowment. Yeah, we're in this constant cycle of proving our concepts. 10 years ago, this author, Dan Pilato, said how charities charities and 501c3s were put in an impossible ROI timeline, that because donors expect to see immediate results, we suffer the consequences within a 2 or 3 month timeline around a project versus a for-profit company that might invest in growth in a strategy that has a 5-year ROI. Are you all, does that really makes a lot of sense to me. It feels like something that I'm really talking about a lot, trying to stretch our ROI expectations. How's that going for you all in your organizations? And Bonnie, let's
Um,
go to you. Yeah.
yeah, no. Yeah. So for us, the capital campaign, so I'm relatively new, so 2 years here at the Art Center. When I look back at the history of capital campaign, so we're what I believe this is our second major capital campaign that we went through in 20 in well ended is ending this year, started back in 2019. So we're not constantly, it doesn't seem like we were constantly doing capital campaigns. So just want to clarify that as well. I think we're strategic. Not-for-profits need to be very strategic, right? So we are not what I read cause donor burnout, right? We're constantly going to the same people, and all of us sometimes share those donors, specifically here in the Des Moines Metro, right? So we're being creative and thinking through. One of the things that I've learned from our development team that they've done amazingly is just keeping the donor continuously informed of the impact of their dollar as you know as we receive them, and how are we investing that. So we've started to utilize some of these capital campaigns, same as my colleagues, for capital improvements and such. So we're constantly making sure that our donors are with us and saying, hey, this is where your dollars are going, right? Is it towards facility? Is it towards programming? Is it impact to one specific visitor to the museum or one specific student that comes to our art classes? This is the change that your dollars is making. So that's something that our development team does amazingly. So it's just telling the story of how we're utilizing those dollars. So they're constantly seeing, not waiting, 1, 2, 3 years to hear about how were those dollars invested or how were those dollars used or and such. So it's bringing the donors along, I think, has been crucial for us, and that for them to be able to continue to support our mission, essentially. So
That plays right to a question that we got about how we educate donors about where their dollars are going. I had a donor conversation recently that was, it was a great reminder. It was, and he and I were chatting. He said, I don't wake up every morning thinking about you or thinking about X, Y, or thinking about the museum or thinking about the orchestra or thinking about whatever. They're regular contributors, but there's a dating structure that we are responsible for keeping in place. And I love that. I think I want to move a little bit into kind of how we manage our staff, and this is a question that came as well, which is and we talked about it a little bit before. What information are you all giving to your staff regularly and the people on your front lines to say, okay, this is how we operate. Here are some misconceptions. Here's what we want you to know, and make sure that you feel confident communicating. Sean, do you have any thoughts there?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we have the smallest staff, I think, of anybody that's on the panel here. So 8 full-time, 8 part-time. And we, after sort of the recession of 2008, when we kind of got hit there, we were also recovering from the flood. So there was a lot going on, at least in Cedar Rapids. There was a lot going on, and things were tight. Things were very tight, and I felt that we needed a lot of transparency. So we sat down with the staff. We told them exactly kind of where things are, and where things need to be, and how long it's going to take to get there, and just sort of really letting everyone know on the team that we had some challenges ahead of us, and that we were going to get through this. We were going to get through this together, though, and I needed everyone's help, everyone's input. I mean, obviously, we couldn't do, or follow up on every one of the ideas that came from the staff, but they all had input on it. And it's something you can do with a smaller staff, I think. You can't necessarily do that with a group of 60, but maybe you can. Maybe I'm wrong. I haven't managed a group of 60. But the buy-in was there. And we did get through it. And there were a couple of lean years there as we sort of turned the ship a bit to kind of get to where we are now, and we are seeing now, several years later, the kind of the benefit of that. Now, I mean, is the money, rolling in? No, we have to constantly be out there working for it. But everyone is sort of a part of the equation, and feel that their contribution helps us with the bottom line, even if it's not part of their day-to-day job, they are still part of the equation. And I think that has worked out very well, sort of being very transparent, much more so than in the past, and just letting the staff know, where everything is. And again, I've been very, very pleased at the response of the staff in helping us reach our goals, fiscal goals, but also our mission goals.
Right.
Katie, I would offer, coming from the finance side, data is so powerful, financial data even more. So we've spent quite a bit of time educating our staff, and same as Sean, just bringing them even through the process of budgeting, right? We do a bottom to top budget process. So each department is charged to put their budget together. And so we are constantly keeping them abreast of the information. Once those budgets are put together, how does it fit in the total piece, right? And not only that, but just through the year, keeping them informed, giving them their financial information so they know, where are they at, how are they aligning for what they projected for the year. And then the other piece too is the education part of our revenue streams. One misconception that from our staff that I remember that when I came in was, how can we be in any financial instability if our endowment, because all of that is public information, right? All they see is what's out there. So we had to spend some time in educating. Our development team actually pulled in all staff and went through the different types of fundraising that we do, and how does the endowment differ from our annual fundraising, that a majority of those funds are restricted. We can only use a portion of that during our operating budget. But so that really opened up some eyes for our staff and answered some questions. So to Sean's point, as much transparent as you can be with your staff, educate them, so then they can turn around and be able to answer those questions if they do receive it from visitors, donors, and such as well. So
yeah, I agree. I think when they don't know, they make things up, and they typically make them up in a way that is like, why aren't you spending money on this or that or that? We can currently build our budget bottom up, Bonnie, like you had mentioned, and the strategic plan, and we connect those two together. We talk about the initiatives. Right now, in the next 2 weeks, we're going to figure out our key initiatives, 4 or 5 things that are going to drive the organization in 2024 and beyond. And that will come from the teams and from us, and it'll sync up our budget with that. So they know that if we've decided that this opportunity here is what we've chosen as an organization, and we're going to invest in that, that may mean there's a couple other areas where we're not able to invest at this particular time. But we present our financials in a limited way to a certain extent, because you don't want 100 rows in a town hall, but we do town halls every other month. And we walk through our financials. We talk about the successes. We bring in admissions. What are we doing with what's the store doing? What's the cafe doing? Where are our expenses? Where are we having higher expenses? Turning it into the very bottom line. How are we doing as an organization? And I think without that transparency, then they just always question, well, why aren't you doing this? And why are you doing that?
I love all this view, and I'm getting so many great ideas. I'm just taking notes as you're going. I think leaving the for-profit sector and moving into the nonprofit sector, I mean, a decade ago, but still, I love the ability to be transparent. I love that I find that we have fewer barriers around this, and we can really speak frankly and publicly about what's going on with our dollars. But one other area, and we are going to talk a little bit more about staff education too. But in our pre-conversations, we talked about a misconception about, you're fully funded by your endowment. You all have made clear, that's not true. And endowments are an important piece of our sustainability. I think we all agree on that, but it's only going to be a portion of your budget. It's not going to be the entirety of your budget. The other is that I find I get questions that seem to ask that nonprofits seem to be in a constant state of bailout. And government funding is very limited for us. I was, it was on the table for the NEA to be funded at $211 million this year, and it won't even achieve that. That was the highest. So that's the National Endowment for the Arts for folks listening. For context, $211 million. That doesn't fund the top 8 regional theaters in the country in their full budgets. It doesn't, you look at the budgets here, we have 9 million, 8 million, 3 million, 2 million, 1 million. I mean, 211 million is nothing. And I asked you all to give me percentages, and this group isn't seeing more than 5% of their budget supported through government funds. Without commenting too much, I mean, we can comment on what we think should be funded, but yeah, what are the challenges? Are you all in positions of lobbying? Are you all are you part of trade organizations that are speaking out? Are you seeing any movement on the government or city support? And do you think that people write us off because they think we're getting a lot of it?
I can chime in a little bit.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I've struggled with. So I made a switch from still in the not-for-profit world, came from healthcare to the
Yes.
cultural arts, right? That is an area where we have I think we've done a really great job in finding support and being able to articulate the why to our to the federal government so they can increase funding and such. It's a little bit harder, I believe, on our side. And I know that probably for museums, Sean, you're probably a part of this. AAM does do some lobbying. I would love to be more involved in that. I think there is a case to be built of the importance, of the cultural arts as healthcare. So how can we increase that, right? For the Des Moines Arts Center, a big part of that 5%, Katie, that I shared with you comes from the city. So that just kind of gives you a picture of what percentage, 20 to 40,000 a year is what we get from the National Endowment Funds, essentially. So that's very, very, very small, right? Doesn't really make any impact. So I think there's opportunity that we could essentially come together and do more advocacy work at the state and the federal level to share our case, our why. Why are we as important as healthcare organizations or not-for-profits that we do deserve a bigger piece of that pie, right? When they're coming to do all of that split. So I think there's opportunity of growth there.
Oh, I totally agree. And I know that, and I'm going to throw it to you, Sean. I think I'm a major advocate at Foundation 2. It's a crisis and suicide prevention network here. And we work together all the time to try and state why arts and culture are an essential part of mental health and suicide prevention. To no reception. Absolutely none. And I know it's so frustrating for my social service colleagues because they see us getting kind of what they see as donor directed funds or maybe some local attention from the foundations that they can't get. But as far as federal dollars, United Way dollars, anything that touches healthcare, I mean, we don't even play in the same playground. It is so far removed. Sean, what were you going to say?
Well, I'm just trying to build on both what you and Bonnie said. If I'm not mistaken, in Europe, in England, doctors actually prescribe visits to art museums as part of healthcare, and it's recognized abroad what kind of role arts and culture plays in good mental health, and in good physical health to a certain extent as well. But yeah, I mean, our support from the state and local really is primarily the Iowa Arts Council, and then in Cedar Rapids, the Hotel Motel Fund that's administered by the city, and it does not constitute more than 5% of our overall budget, which means that we have to really kind of lean into foundations, which there aren't so many in Cedar Rapids, and other kinds of grants, and a lot of what the Iowa Arts Council gets, they get from the National Endowment for the Arts. So that's very important organization to support on the federal level because it does directly impact the state level giving. But it is a challenge. There's a misconception. I mean, we have Cedar Rapids in our name, so people think that we're owned and operated by the city. And it's not the case. We just, we hold all of these works in public trust for the city, and so they're part of our name. But it is a misconception, and we do take every opportunity to try and sort of explain that we're not owned and operated by the city. We don't get the lion's share of our support from the city or from the state. It really comes from individuals. It's the individuals that have contributed to the endowment, which has put us in this particular position of our current state of our endowment. But it's also individuals that give to the annual fund, that buy memberships, that run companies in the area that then support the museum or come to our fundraisers. It's individuals, and all of us see visitors from all over the place. I mean, we see people from all 50 states and for us 25 foreign countries every single year, and they pay their admission and they go. Our support comes from our local community. They're the ones who are going to buy memberships. A visitor from Maine is not going to buy a membership. Okay, not going to contribute to the annual fund, probably not going to come to our fundraiser, but it is our local community, individuals in our local community that make all the difference to us. It's not going to be the state or the federal government. It's always, for us, going to be our local community.
Yes. Thank you for that, Sean. And I want to talk a little bit more about our local communities in terms of employment and how we are all, another really big misconception that we all talked about is that somehow the mission of a nonprofit is going to pay for dinner on your table. So working for a nonprofit, somehow that mission is supposed to fuel us. And for a long time, it's just been this concession that if you work for a nonprofit, you are conceding to earning less. Now, I mean, this group, all four of us, we have advanced degrees in our sectors. We have business degrees. We are professionally calibered and could work across different sectors, right? And I know that we are competing in the exact same labor market as everyone else is. What are you all doing to stay competitive? What are you seeing in the labor market? And how can we debunk this myth that somehow we're just going to sit in this world of paying less and getting less and burning out more? I think, Bonnie, you had some ideas.
Yeah, no, I was going to let my colleagues go, but no, this is an
And then
area
Kurt,
where
you're
I'm
next.
very passionate about, actually, because for human resources for us, retention and attraction, bringing talented staff has been a challenge, and so because we are competing, as I shared with you earlier, Katie, at least in the Des Moines Metro, we're competing with Wells Fargo, we're competing with Principal, Corteva, so corporations, right, that are very competitive, not only on salary, but on benefits. So we really had to really step up our game. So one of the first things that we did was do a market analysis. Where are we at? How competitive are we currently with our wages? So we developed a salary wage band that pulled. We worked with a consultant. I believe they're around your area, Newport, that did our analysis of our wage bands. We established a wage band, a competitive. We asked them not only to evaluate not-for-profits, we asked them to look at for-profits. Specifically around our area. We, of course, we're different. We're in the cultural arts. We also use data from AAMD that as part of it. But we didn't want him to just use that because, we're a museum in Des Moines. What does it look like for us? So we really had to make our wages more competitive. Katie, as you mentioned, right? It's not just the mission. It's like, what they're going to do with us, earn us, how much can they do? So we wanted to provide that for our staff. This year, we're looking at all of our benefits, looking at healthcare, how much of that do we contribute, looking at 403B or 401k for many of you. What is corporate doing? Because that's a top of mind of most people that are looking for jobs. So we are doing some investments in that as well to make us competitive. So we are able to attract best talent. So that I think has been, as you said, a myth that people that work in not-for-profits can't make money, right? Or make enough to support themselves. It's not just about the mission. So we have to think outside the box when it comes to that. So.
Bonnie, we've done some similar things too. We've done, 2.5 years ago, we did a complete compensation analysis. Looked at every single job we have, put them into a spreadsheet, went to the Association of Zoos and Aquariums for comparable positions. They do an annual survey of all those same types of positions. And then we also went to AAM. Their information was a few years old, unfortunately, and hopefully they'll update that again. We also worked with a local community college where they had a lot of data, regional data. So we took all of that as an input. Then we looked at our jobs and what jobs were related, not exactly the same type of job, but skill sets that they have. And we put them in certain grades. So we developed a grade system and then we put everybody in there. And using the Association of Zoos and Aquariums and the AAM adjusted for today's dollars, we decided that we wanted to pay, our bottom would be the 25th percentile. So other organizations are paying less, but we started there and then we moved up. And then we also added job grades for example, curator 1, curator 2, curator 3. So they would not only have an opportunity for promotion, but the ability to move into a different grade. So then that enabled us to really manage our entire organization fairly and equitably. We annually look at this. We just received the Association of Zoos and Aquariums, and we are now updating. And we've already found one position that is now below the 25th percentile. So last week, we bumped them up, and we didn't put them right at the bottom. We actually placed them where they should be. So they moved up even further. And we have committed to our staff to be transparent and to also continue to do this annually. And I know that money is a job dissatisfier, not a job satisfier. And so if you're not feeling like you're making enough, you're dissatisfied. But we try to be as fair as possible with the entire organization so that everybody can move up. So we don't just move starting salary from this to this or starting wage rate from this to this. We slide everybody up so that that employee who's been here for 5 years is not making the same as the new person that walked in off the street.
And we're
Yeah.
hiring talented people, people with advanced degrees or years of experience, and they need to be compensated appropriately for bringing that to the table. If any of us, I've done national searches lately. I mean, you get wonderful qualifications, and you think, okay, what's going to take to get them to Iowa? And so it's different for each person. So I mean, you've got your baseline, but you oftentimes have to tweak that a little bit to attract a particular individual to join your team. But I mean, it's there are specialized positions in all of our organizations that do require specialized training and or education, and so that's also at play as you hire people. You have to appropriately compensate people for their experience, for their education, because that's the only way that you're going to move your organization and mission forward.
I thank you for these insights, and I just appreciate all of your reflections on we're benchmarking against national trends. We're also benchmarking about what's going on in our regions and in our state to stay realistic. And again, this piece of transparency with our staff and our organizations, I'll add, do not retire and think you're going to work at a nonprofit. Don't do this. We are businesses. We are businesses, and we will burn you out. This is a specific mindset. We don't have a clock out time necessarily. And I think the amount of personal cultural responsibility we carry to empower people to kind of stop their workday, as well as the self-awareness that it takes to work in a nonprofit is pretty high, even for an arts and culture. It's not just social service where we could just go forever. In our last 5 minutes, I want to ask each of you, what's a challenge that you see ahead for your sector that looks a little daunting, and what is exciting? And it's fine if they're the same thing. Let's start with you, Kurt.
There are many challenges for organizations like ours. I think the River Museum and Aquarium is a really special place, but in many cases, some of the things you do to keep up proactively, we're kind of kicked down the road a little bit. So we're playing a little bit of catch up. What that means to us is we're funding, as opposed to having something break and fixing it, we're actually looking at the schedule and when we need to repair these and doing that ahead of time. And unfortunately, you're always surprised by something maintenance wise. Saying that, the benefit of that is really taking great care of your property, your guests, your staff, your animals, and fish. To me, the guest experience has to override everything else we do. And when somebody says, well, you know, if we don't fix these chillers up in the Mississippi River Museum, that could affect the fish and animals. And so we always are benefiting based on the knowledge of our team, input from them on where we should be spending those dollars to really encourage great guest experience. So a lot of changes have happened here, new aquariums, new this, new that. But overriding that is when guests come here, there's something new, something fun, and it's that guest experience that really rings true.
I love it. What about you, Bonnie? What's ahead? That's a challenge and an excitement.
Yeah, so I think for us on the cultural side, it's it relates to that donor fatigue, right? And then also being able to, or continuing to be able to explain to them is the importance of the work that the museum does, not just inside of the museum, but also outside. Staying on top of that, because like you mentioned, Katie, they may not just be giving to one association, they're giving to multiple, right? And so how do we stay at top of mind for them so they can continue to fund us or donate or contribute to our purpose, to our mission. So I think that continues to be a challenge for us. But I think I'm excited about we have been able to identify our whys, as you mentioned, the connection between the cultural arts and mental health, right? That's a why that we haven't tapped into as much as I think we should. And there's so much that we can do to collaborate with our colleagues on the healthcare sector that can help us do that as well. So I'm excited about that. So we can essentially build our value proposition more. What as a cultural arts we bring to the table, essentially.
Yes. Oh, yes. I love this. Sean.
Well, I'm going to build a little bit on what Bonnie said. We do have a value proposition, I think, that we need to articulate. And I think that would help us, for us, particularly on the funding side of things, especially at the state and federal levels. I think there's a potential there for growth, but it's going to take a lot of advocacy. We're going to have a lot of conversations about our economic impact as a sector on the state and on the federal level. And we have advocates, at AAM, AAMD, and the Iowa Museum Association, others that help voice that. But that would be, I see, the particular challenge for the whole sector here. Like Kurt, we've got some building issues we want to address, and we've got a 20-year plan on improvements we need to make. We're a lot of our newest mechanicals are 30 years old, so we're staring down the barrel there for
Same.
sure. But so those need to be tended to sooner rather than later. And it's not like there's pots. We're not printing money in the basement. We have printing presses, but not printing money down there. But no, that's kind of a personal time, but it's also in a very exciting time because we've after the pandemic now we've really kind of gotten back to almost full visitation again, and can really start planning out further. And the staff and I are very excited. We just hired a new curator, so we've got some new vision coming into the organization, and I'm very excited about what the future holds for us.
It is so fun to talk with all of you. I appreciate this time. I think there's a lot of exciting things for each of us in the future. I will add in the theater sector. There's a lot of industry hubbub right now that we're in crisis, and we were in crisis before the pandemic. I am personally excited for nonprofits to band together. There's an assumption that if we only shared back of house functions, everything will be fine. Well, that assumes that we've got a lot of slack on our staff, and we don't. And I think that there's a really exciting new way to start thinking about our business model. that doesn't involve this fallacy of somehow I can just throw someone to your organization and save it. I don't have that person. So it's a really it's a unique place to work, and I am grateful that each of you have answered the call to serve and lead your respective nonprofits. And with that, it's 11 and I've got to go. And thanks so much, everybody. And thanks for those who joined us.
Thank you, Katie.
Thanks,
Thanks.
Katie.
Thank you, Kurt.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Sean.
Bye.
Bye.